headed to the next round at this year's event. And we'll have all the details. We'll run down the scores. We'll talk about the format, and we'll let you know what's happening as things unfold over the next few hours here. Again, I'm joined by Jason Thomas. He'll be here in just a minute to help us talk through the action as we wait to see how this all turns out. Again, two squads. We had B squad on the lanes earlier on the fresh 40-foot oil pattern, and now A squad rolled on the fresh yesterday. They get the burn today, and we'll see who's gonna make that cut number against 40 people. 40 bowlers will advance from this field of now 153 competitors to tomorrow's cashers round. That'll be based on their 12-game pinfall totals over these 2 days, and then they'll bowl 6 more games tomorrow, after which the 18-game pinfall totals will determine the 12 players for the unique match play portion of the event. But enough looking at me. Let's look at some bowling and see who we've got on the lanes today. We've got much of the house covered here at Samstown. Jason Thomas has been hard at work making it all happen. He's going to join us now and bring in, again, some terrific insight and valuable information.
Matthew, my mic, and hello. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing well. I think we are energized and ready now. We had an interesting 6 games this morning, right? We'll talk about that and some of the ups and downs we saw on our featured pairs and across the house. We'll talk about some of the players who did well, some of the surprises, and some standouts on this squad. It looks like you chose Walter Ray Williams Jr. to help us kick things off here on day 2 as he looks to claim this event for the very first time.
Yeah, I thought it would be interesting to watch him and Tony Rodriguez, who's on the same pair. Tony had some success coming down the stretch yesterday as the lane started to hook a little bit. So I'm curious to see how he does, and then also how Walter Ray attacks the burn. I'm sure he'll do fine, but we've noticed that, and I even watched in practice, Walter Ray was having some carry issues with some corner pins, playing the inside angle. So let's see if he can navigate his way through that. He was having no trouble hitting the pocket whatsoever, but let's see if he can find a way to throw some strikes here. And he's in good shape starting the final 6 games of qualifying, but needs to have a good day to advance into our cashers round tomorrow.
Well, we saw things get off to a pretty slow start this morning on the fresh, and then by the end of the day, 6 games later, the scores were looking pretty decent. The strikes were a little bit easier to come by on these pairs. We saw many around us throughout the day. Maybe again, it's the bright lights of the Bull TV cameras. Who knows? But in any regard, things ended a lot better than they started, and now we've already seen a few strikes here early in game number 1. The goal for many, make it into the top 40, get yourself a prize check, and have 6 more games to have at it tomorrow. Try to make the top 12, and then others, as you said, Walter Ray, probably aiming a little bit higher than you or I might coming into one of these events. And,
for sure.
Nothing or anything short of the top 12 probably would be a bit disappointing. So the easiest way to get there is just to be there the whole time, right? There's no fight at that point, and then you're just hanging on and cruising into match play where 8 of the 12 players will have a chance to really win this event. So in the unique format, but the goal, you got to get there one step at a time. Some think way ahead, some just trying to sneak in and give it a run, but well, that's all part of it. It's how you handle things mentally as well.
And there's the first corner pin there for Walter Ray, leaves the 10 pin in the second, and we saw quite a bit of that in practice. But the other thing to watch for here this afternoon is how the lefties fare. We did have a couple of lefties make big runs earlier this morning. CK Moore got to plus 177, had a 1352 block, which is 152 over. Mike Diaz had the high game of the tournament to 290 in game number 4 on his block today. He got to plus 170. So a number of lefties had good days yesterday on the fresh, who we're going to get to watch here bowl this afternoon, including former PBA champions Hugh Miller and Eric Forkel. And this afternoon, they're on the burn. So we'll see how they do with the lanes transitioning just a little bit. And I also should mention Matt is a lefty, so he's going to have the all-world insight into how those lefties are playing plays.
Or I might take a look at somebody of that caliber and say, well, that certainly explains a lot about my own career. If I would have thought of that about 20 years sooner, but there's still time. Right, I'm still very far removed from taking my shot at this event. I got some time to practice before the senior masters as well, but some great left-handers here, and you named a couple already. Always enjoy getting to watch the likes of Parker Bone and what he's done at this in this venue. Hopefully, we'll see him in a couple days at the senior masters, but always fun to watch some of the best in action, and completely jealous in most regards.
Paul McCordick, another one of those lefties. He's bowling on one of our featured pairs on 19 and 20, right in front of where we're sitting, and twin brother of Pete McCordick, who had a nice block earlier today, bowled a big last game to lock himself into the number going tomorrow. So he's another one to watch for.
We saw Paul get off to a great start yesterday and then some stumbles, whereas I believe it was Eric Forkel also on this squad who started a little bit slower and then he caught fire. So the opposite reaction, and many things could have attributed to that, of course. Simply could be based on who you follow. So
absolutely.
Now that we're on the burn, you mentioned the lefties who bowled well earlier. Following them definitely could be beneficial for these guys now. But we've seen them all put up some big numbers, and no doubt it's out there. So let's get it, Paul McCordick and Eric Forkel and all the other lefties.
Well, I mentioned Walter Ray. He, was known when he first came out on tour in the mid 80s as a player who was able to hook the ball quite a bit. Liked to go left to right, and then became extremely adept at going up the lane, and then obviously had the Hall of Fame career that he had. But these lanes are hooking quite a bit, and what ended up ultimately causing Walter Ray to make the decision, to leave the national tour just a few months back was, he just didn't have the pop on his ball anymore to be able to carry corner pins when the lane's hooked and he had to jump inside. And so, we're going to get to see him navigate that right now, and already out of the gate, 2 out of 3 flat 10s to start his block.
JT, never like to see the best around kind of, I don't want to say fall off in their older years, because certainly these guys have not done that. But Walter Ray is one who's been able to adapt, right? Never relying on the tools. You mentioned hooking the ball, and then all of a sudden the versatility showed, and then some of the things he's added to his game, like the two-handed style, and just trying to keep up, not being complacent or just accepting that he's reached the ceiling, right? There's always something, and when it was time, he realized, and he and Pete Weber both made the call and focused their attention, because if you are bowling everything, it certainly can lead to a very exciting but exhausting year, right? If you hit all of the events and the regionals and both tours and the PBA 60 events now, and that's a lot.
Yeah, and Walter Ray bowls everything. He loves to compete. And they had a sweeper here earlier this week to kick off the event, and he bowled that, won it. So he had a good start to his run here. Competed in the Senior U.S. Open. So he just loves getting out and mixing it up and bowling. I mean, even back in the day when he was the top bowler in the world, they would have little local tournaments, and he'd go out and bowl those when he was out at a tour stop. So he just loves getting out there and competing. So I'm not sure how much that's going to weigh on him. He just loves getting out there and chewing up and throwing the ball. But just curious to see, how he's going to be able to navigate on this burn, and if he's going to be able to figure out a way to get. He's going to hit the pocket, and he even said that when he talked about his retirement. He said, "I can still hit the pocket just as much as anybody. The problem is, my strike percentage is a lot lower than the young guys. Fortunately in this tournament, there aren't any young guys that he's having to compete against.
Well, there's that one guy, that one pesky new guy who's leading the field at 60 years and 10 days old.
Yep, Amleto Monicelli. But, Amleto took a little while to warm up on the fresh this morning. And Walter pulled on the fresh yesterday and had a look at it. He actually took a little time to warm up as well. Got his score later in the block. And yet another flat 10. Just can't get that ball to retain its energy going through the pins. It's got to be incredibly frustrating. I think it's also why, we saw Walter Ray messing around with the two-handed style. When you get into situations like this, looking for another option to give the ball a little bit more pop. But, 9 spares and a catch a couple doubles here and there in this tournament, it's going to get him where he needs to go. But I think if he's going to want to win this tournament, he's making sure he's got that second ball focus.
Well, I feel like when we talked about his two-handed option, it was on a higher scoring condition to where everybody was hitting the pocket and the powerful guys were throwing the pins around. And on that particular day, 9 spare wasn't going to be enough, right? On this, 9 spares are going to be better.
Yeah.
Okay, but so he adapted that style to help him get those few extra revs and just the occasional messenger, and to up that strike percentage a little bit to help him keep up better when the lanes are a little bit higher scoring. So he knows there's a time and a place, and to use that as an option, and it certainly made sense.
Yeah, Rick in the chat saying, thinks he needs a stronger ball on the back end. Thinks this one might be burning up a little bit too quick, which I think I agree with that. I mean, the thing that's tricky, and you alluded to it a little bit there, Matt, with talking about the difficulty of the conditions, is you just start playing around with stuff like that, and all of a sudden you lose the pocket and you start leaving 2 8-10s and 5 through the nose, and he's controlling the pocket. And Walter Ray is always going to be a player that fine tunes hand position to try to get the ball to do something slightly different. I mean, best story I've got a lot of great stories about Walter Ray, but I think one of my favorites was he made the show at the Plastic Ball Championship with with 4 power players on the show. It was the year Brian Zysick won, and the guys were waiting for their matches. Mike Fagan and Belmo and Zysick in the bar where they had the TV show on. They weren't in the bar for any other reason than just to watch the show and see what was going on. And every time Walter would throw a shot, they would say flat 10, and the ball would pop the 10 out. And they were like, how does he do that? How does he get the ball to pop the 10 out? He has no power. And he just had this uncanny knack to make the ball do the right thing right where he needed it to go through the pins in just the right way to strike. And we just saw him do it there. Made a little tiny hand position adjustment to kind of spin the ball through the front part of the lane a little bit more, and it made that sharp return on the back end. No ball change, but the ball made a completely different shape because he made a little subtle hand position adjustment. We'll see if he can work his way through that. But that's always been his mark of greatness. He just finds a way to get himself in the right place on the lane to where he's able to hit the pocket, and then he fine tunes from there to get the ball to strike. If you're checking out the action on Facebook with us, thanks for joining us. If you want to watch the full round of action, you're going to have to join us over on bulltv.com. If you don't happen to have a subscription, we've got 3 ways to join. One is the event tickets. We've got one for the Super Senior Classic and another one for the upcoming Senior Masters next week. If you want both of those for the best price, sign up for a monthly subscription. That'll get you the next 2 events and for another few weeks of Bull TV coverage. It also gives you access to all of the archives on Bull TV as well. And if you like what you see, then you can continue. And the best option is the annual subscription. The annual subscription is we worked out one time with the number of events that we do. If you break it out against an annual subscription, it costs you between 5 and 8 cents a broadcast, Matt, to be a subscriber to Bull TV.
It's a pretty sweet deal. 5 and 8 cents.
It's like the cost of a cup of coffee back in 1910. Look at that. Look at that. That is cool. See, this is one of the reasons why bowling is a great sport, but also a sport that doesn't get probably the recognition and the respect it deserves. He just made a complete hand position adjustment with what he was doing with the ball at the bottom, and you could tell it's almost like he was spinning the ball at the release, whereas before he was more up the back. The shots he threw when he went strike, flat 10, flat 10, flat 10. The last 2 shots, he kind of went around it and spun it, and the ball made a completely different shape. It got through the front a lot cleaner, and then made this hard turn on the back end, and he went high flush and light mixer the last 2 shots for a double. And that's, I think it goes back to Rick's point about, the ball change. I think most of us would have probably made a ball change, right? We all would have said, this is just not the right ball. I'm not going to be able to make this work. And Walter just thinks differently. And I mentioned it yesterday. He just thinks differently than the rest of us. He says things like, well, I'm hitting the pocket, so all I need to do is just make a slight tweak. And I'll be there. I'll string a bunch of strikes. And that's exactly what he's done. And that's why he's so great. That's why he's so much better than everybody else. He just thinks through things a little bit differently, and it works for him. Well, that one didn't hit as hard as he had hoped, but again, he's still hitting the pocket. And to Matt's point earlier, conditions are tough. 2 teams are good games. Walter Ray knows that. He's never going to miss a single pin. He very well may get a look at a different ball on his fill ball, but it kind of goes back to something we talk about with Shannon O'Keefe all the time. Shannon O'Keefe is a very conservative player when it comes to making moves like that, typically. Unless she has to make a ball change in order to stay alive in a tournament or in a stepladder finals match. She's very content with hitting the pocket, controlling the pocket, and if she has to, waiting until it's the exact right time to move into that next ball. She'll take a couple of 2 teams until she's completely sure that next ball she wants to go to really will give her that 250 reaction. If you're going to shoot a couple of 2 teams and the next ball you're going to go to may give you 150, but it may give you 250, what are you going to do? What is the statistically smart play to make? You stick with the 2 teams. So Walter's gonna give this ball a chance the rest of this game, see if he can work with his release. And what's funny is he might be doing like his C or D or F game with what he's doing with this release, and it's not what he'd prefer to be doing. I mean, he'd prefer to be going up the back of it and zipping through it aggressively like he normally does. But this is, you notice how tight his follow through is when he does this. and he'll give it a fair chance. And when he's finally tired of the flat tens, he will make a ball change. But again, he's going to shoot 2-teen doing this. Nice spare conversion there. Greg Popham with the 3-6-7 conversion. And we mentioned Tony Rodriguez. He had a nice look towards the end of the block yesterday. And he's got a good game going. Nothing but strikes and 9 counts. Possible 237 if he can go off the sheet here. But, he's a lot more comfortable playing this part of the lane and zipping it left to right than Walter is. Tony getting to play his A game right now. But that's what makes Walter great. I mean, he's hanging with Tony score-wise and not getting to do anything close to what he would prefer to be doing. I've got a good story about Walter Ray. It seems similar story to the 300 game in the Pro-Am. That same tournament in Hawaii. Same tournament. I was crossing with Walter Ray in that tournament. And we were both struggling the whole day, just kind of going nowhere. And with 2 games to go, I jumped way left of everybody and just said, I'm going to just try to slow hook it and go around everybody and see if that works. And ended up shooting 250, 260 the last 2 games doing that. And about 3 frames into doing it, Walter Ray saw the look I had, and he did it. He jumped in left with me. And he shot 260, 270 the last 2 games to make the cut. And he ended up winning the tournament. I did not end up winning the tournament. I think I finished 14th or 15th. But that just shows you, how great Walter is. As soon as he sees something, he's on top of it.
Yeah, he never tried to line up off of me. I don't know how I should feel.
Well, the next day he was able to play up the outside part of the lane, and he ran away and hit. But I was not as good at doing it as he was. But Tony with a big strike there, first shot in the 10th. He can still shoot 237. That one just in a touch and doesn't lay off. But he'll be in the 220s. So 225 for Tony. Walter A getting up in the 10th. He can shoot 226. Wow. Wow, that one went through the pins like a hot knife through butter. Pretty impressive. Same ball. Remember how ugly the ball was going through the pins the first 5 frames, and then compare it to that one. And all he did was make a little hand position adjustment and kind of fine-tuned it over the next couple of shots. That was a lot of fun to watch. I mean, you look up and you go, okay, it's Walter Ray shooting 220. Who cares? Yeah, and he made the chicken wing motion there. He definitely went around that one early and got it inside a target, and it didn't lay off. But he'll be in the 2 teens, and he had a 2 teen reaction, and he bowled 2 teen.
JT, I'll be thrilled with 2 teens. 8 2 teens will get you in the cut at most events.
And James asking if about 300 games in the tournament yet. No, none yet. 290, our high game. Mike Diaz on our last squad bowled that to give himself a place in tomorrow's cashers round. Also asked about Bob Learn and Parker Bone. Those guys will be shoeing up for the Senior Masters next week. But those folks on Facebook who were joining us here in game number 1, we're going to go ahead and sign off now. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to check us out over on Bowl TV, find out who's going to make this top 40, please go over to bowltv.com.